Tonight we're going to talk about trust and obey. Trusting in God and obeying God. I'm going to take my time because we're going to use two texts that I might have preached out of 1 Kings 15 and 2 Chronicles 16 maybe a few times since I've been preaching. So this is not typically a sermon text that we deal with a lot. So I'm going to take my time and I'm going to do a little background history, and hopefully if you're taking notes or when you get the lesson or download it or whatever, you can go back and follow up and fact check it even more. But number one, our first objective is to understand trust as it relates to the Bible. Trust as it relates to the Bible. And I'm going to show how this, we're going to see from these passages of Scripture we're going to look at in Kings and Chronicles, this idea of trust. All right? And when I say Bible, ultimately I'm talking about trust as it relates to the God of the Bible, right? And the second point, we want to understand who is Asa and how does he purport with what we're going to be reading, all right? So let's do, well, hey, I thought I only had two. But I only have like 4 slides, so it's all right. To show how to trust and obedience is not a one-time thing. That is key. That's why I put that up there at the end. Trusting and obeying God is not a one-time thing I've done. Kind of like you cast your ballot to vote that one time, hopefully. You cast your ballot to vote that one time, and that's it. But trust in God and obedience to God is not a one-time thing. As we'll see, it is a lifelong commitment. It is a lifelong thing. All right, let's define this word trust here. And I forgot to put the bullets on here to come in, but that's all right. It means to be confident, unsuspecting, to cause to rely on. This idea of unsuspecting is the exact opposite of trust. If you and I are suspecting of someone, then we don't have trust. When you are in a friendship, a relationship, the one thing that wars against trust is your suspecting of this person and their unfaithfulness or their lack of trust. You are suspecting, I wonder if this person is doing this, and I wonder is this right here. But truthfully, like Paul will talk to Timothy, we ought to be able to give the benefit of the doubt. We ought to be people that trust. In other words, and I have no reason to not believe in you until you give me that reason. All right? So to be confident, unsuspecting, to cause to rely on. Firm belief in the reliability. Firm, that idea again of Psalm 1, that unwavering, that tree that's planted by the water, that roots go down, a firm belief or trust in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. All right, we're going to remember this because we're going to come back to it here in a minute. In regards to corporate law or just law in general, confidence placed in a person by making that person the nominal owner of property to be held or used for the benefit of one or more others. In the medical field, the idea is a power of attorney, right? And your dad, mom, aunt, brother, uncle might give you that power of attorney. They trust you to make a big decision, do they not? I really wish I don't have it right now. I'm glad, but I would hate to be the one that which my parents gave me that responsibility. You know what? That's a whole lot when you talk about trust in regards to sickness and illness like that. And I've seen from my previous jobs in the hospital that right there can cause a lot of family splits. You know it? Sadly, it can. But it's a lot of responsibility. Trust. And that's what we're going to be seeking from the Scripture. So let's go to 1 Kings. All right, 1 Kings. 1 Kings, chapter number 15. And let's understand about Asa. So since we're dealing with the kings, no doubt you should know that Asa is a king. Now, prior to this, when you have kings, remember, let's do a little teaching to make sure we remember this. Did God ever want them to have a physical king like this? He did not. He did not. They ultimately, if you go back to 1 Samuel, you'll remember how Eli did not do right. He had 2 boys, Hophni and Phinehas, remember that? But he didn't restrain them. And then Samuel, the one whom he trained, Hannah's son, remember him that she prayed about and she gave to the Lord? He has this vision, and basically it tells him, hey, I'm about to bring to pass all these things. Well, then in the process of time, when you go to 1 Samuel chapter 8, guess what happens with Samuel's boys? They do the same thing. They're being wicked. They're being bad. And so the people say, look, you put your boys in charge, but they're wicked. They're vile and all this other stuff. You're old. Before you die, basically, why don't you just appoint for us a king so we can be like other nations? But the thing grieved Samuel, and he lamented over that. But when you read chapter 8 and chapter 9 of 1 Samuel, you would see what these kings are going to do. They're going to take from your land. They're going to do this, your daughters, and all these other things like that. Well, now you have the process of time. The first king is Saul. Second one is King David. And then after that, you got Rehoboam and Jeroboam, and it's divided kingdom. Solomon's son and another one, and it's divided. The kingdoms are called the northern and the southern. The northern is Israel, and the southern is Judah. Well, right now, Asa, before him, the king there is wicked and vile. But Asa is a pretty good king. Abijam is a wicked king of Judah, the southern tribe. Now let's read, and we'll make sense of a lot of this, what I'm saying as we read. 1 Kings chapter 15, let's start at verse 9. In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa began to reign over Judah, and he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Absalom. And Asa did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, as David his father had done. That's his great-grandfather, really. He put away the male cult prostitutes out of the land and removed all the idols that his father had made. So you see his daddy is wicked, right? You remember Joshua asked for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord and all that, and the covenant they made, right? And Deuteronomy and the second giving of the law. Well, you can see obviously his daddy, Abijam, ain't following this stuff, all right? Verse 13 says, he also removed Micaiah, his mother, from being queen mother because she had made an abominable image for Asherah. Wait a minute. This man right here, Asa, from what you can already see, is a very good man, is he not? My daddy is doing wrong, but notice something first. Just because daddy's doing it does not mean it's right and does not mean I have to do it. And we have to learn that principle in matters of religion. Just because family or friends and everybody else is doing it doesn't mean I have to go along with it. Then it gets even more personal because, we all love mama, right? And mama's very near and dear to us. It's that, I call it the 9-month connection. But anyways, mama done messed up here too, has she not? And he even got to remove her from it. All right? What are we learning about the character of King Asa? All right, so he says he removed his mother from being queen mother because she had made an abominable image for Asherah. One more point. This just goes to show you that you don't have to be a product of your environment. A lot of times you hear this stuff. I was raised like this. I'm from the other side of the tracks and things like that. And excuses that people oftentimes use. That is hogwash. You and I make our choice and we make up our mind. All right. Now it keeps on saying, and Asa cut down her image and burned it at the brook of Kidron. But the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa, watch it, was wholly true to the Lord all his days. Remember, we talked about that word heart this morning. He is wholly true. In other words, he's truly devoted to Jehovah Yahweh God all his life. Verse 15. And he brought into the house of the Lord the sacred gifts of his father and his own sacred gifts, silver and gold and vessels. And there was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. So now you have the northern tribe and the southern tribe warring. Let's just make it more applicable. You got one side of the family fighting with the other side of the family. Now, around this time, we sometimes argue and fight. Well, we went to your family last year for Thanksgiving. Well, we always got to go to your mama's house. There was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. King Baasha of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might permit no one to go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. You see, they were supposed to go down to Jerusalem. Judah's a southern tribe, and that's where you're supposed to go to worship. But you remember, he set it up on the northern tribe. He said, you ain't got to go there. I'll set these places up in Dan and Bethel, and you can go to Dan and Bethel and worship instead of going to Jerusalem and worship like you're supposed to. And so I'm trying to prevent them from doing certain things. You follow along with me? So I don't want you to go there. I'm going to build these things up. Verse 18. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasure of the house of the Lord and the treasure of the king's house, and gave them into the hands of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Benhadad, the son of Tabarimon, the son of Hazael, king of Syria, who lived in Damascus, saying, let there be a covenant between me and you, as there was between my father and your father. Now, hold on, let's slow down. You got the king of Syria, all right? The king of Syria has no business whatsoever in this family affair. You ever been like this? You know, I got multiple siblings, and you ever been like, you know, and you can call your sister a name, or you could tease her or something like that, but can't nobody else do that, right? This is a family matter, and now you're bringing the king of Syria into this matter, and that's even worse, not to mention he's wicked. So now he's bringing this wicked king in here. Now, let's keep reading. Let's keep this in mind. It'll make sense when we get to Chronicles, and we can get to our application point here in a second. So now he's got the king of Syria here, who lived in Damascus, saying, let there be a covenant, verse 19, between me and you, and there was between my father and your father. Well, your father didn't do right. Behold, I am sending to you a present of silver and gold. Go, break your covenant with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may withdraw from me. So you're taking silver and gold from the Lord's house, and you're giving it to this pagan, wicked king of Syria. He messing up, is he not? He is messing up. Verse 20. And Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel and conquered Aijah, Dan, Abel, Beth, Mahach, and all of Chinneroth with all the land of Naphtali. And when Baasha heard of it, he stopped building Ramah and lived in Tirzah. Then King Asa made a proclamation to all Judah. None was exempt, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and its timber with which Baasha had been building. So what he built up, they tore down. What the northern king had been built up, they tore down with the help of this Syrian king. Is you following now? Okay. And with them, King Asa built Jeba of Benjamin and Mizpah. Now the rest of all the acts of Asa and all his might and all that he did and the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Judah? But in his old age, he was diseased in his feet. And Asa slept with his fathers and was buried with his father in the city of David, his father. And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his place. So, yes, we see from right here that he is a very good king. But what do we realize here? Even in our Christian walk, we're going to have some times where we choose to not choose the best decision. And he made this bad decision, and we're going to see just how it was. But there's a point or two I want to bring out about Asa before we get into the chronicle part, and then we'll make more application. All right. So Asa, no doubt, was a good king. And in verse 13, that's what was a point in there I wanted to make sure. Oh, yeah, talking about his mama. Look at Luke 14, 26 through 27. If anyone comes to me and does not hate, which means literally love less, his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yea, his own and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. What I see here exemplified early on is the idea that I have to put God above any and everything else. And that is so hard when it comes sometimes to matters of religion and things like this, because we love this person right here. But we ought to obey God rather than man. You remember that? I'm going to tell you another one that Paul says, talking to the Galatians, I believe it is. Paul, on that road to Damascus, you remember what happens. His conversion is recorded 3 times in the Holy Writ. All right. And as you see Paul on that road, when he later reflects on it to the Galatians, I believe it is, he says, immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood. What do you mean? I did not go ask mama about this. I did not go ask daddy about this. I didn't want to see what my kids thought about this. All of that did not matter. All the things that we sometimes bring into play when it comes to us truly serving God, Paul says, no, I'm not being bothered with those things right there. He was wholly committed after what he had heard and seen, and he spent that time with God in the desert in Arabia 3 years. He is fully committed to him, and he didn't go convert with flesh and blood. Once it was told to him what he did, immediately he did it, all right? And so Asa, again, he literally places first over his own father and mother, God, and that's what we have to do. Sometimes we place our children in the place of God. What do you mean? Well, it's our decisions and what we make. Well, my kid has to be here right here at this particular place at this particular time. And it's the same time I need to be at worship service. It's the same time that the saints are gathering to sing praise, offer up prayer, commune, offer, and be edified. I got to make a choice now, right? What am I going to do? Am I going to choose the better? Am I going to choose to be with them and get this taste of heaven, if you will? Or am I going to choose this carnal thing? We all have to make decisions. And when we make the latter decision and go with that, we're not loving less the world and putting him first. But that's what King Asa did, even his mother. Can you imagine when you think of King Asa and his mother? Can you imagine a son telling mom, you was wrong? And because you did this, I got to tear all this stuff down. In fact, I got to take you out of this position that you were so used to. Can you imagine how that would be to tell your mom like that? Can you imagine? Now, some of us might be like, yeah, I can't wait. My mom been mean. But no, that's not the case. Even if you did feel that way, that takes a whole lot to do that. So we can learn, no doubt, a lot from the character. All right, let's get to Chronicles version of this lesson. Second Chronicles chapter number 15. Second Chronicles chapter number 15. All right. I said 16. I said 15, but it really 15. When you look at chapter 15, you're going to see a lot of the reforms and the different things that Asa had did. All right. I'm trying to see some. They sacrificed, all those things. Look at verse 12 and 15. They entreated into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, with all their heart, with all their soul, but that whoever would not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, should be put to death, whether young or old, man or woman. He was serious about making reforms to the nation of Judah. That's what you see in chapter 15. He was going to be a leader, and we want everybody to be in lockstep. Verse 14, they swore an oath to the Lord with a loud voice, and with shouting, and with trumpets, and with horns. And all Judah rejoiced over the oath, for they had sworn with all their heart, and had sought him with their whole desire, as he was found by them. And the Lord gave them rest all around. All right, verse 16 again, even Micaiah, his mother, King Asa, removed from being queen mother because she had made a detestable image for Asherah as Asa cut down her image, crushed it and burned it in the book of Kidron. So again, we see all the reforms and how he's a good king. Now let's look at this latter part again in chapter 16, and let's emphasize this, and then we'll go over to a proverb, and the lesson will be yours. Chapter 16, in the 36 years of the reign of Asa, Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah. Well, we know what that was. That he might permit no one to go out or come into Asa, king of Judah. And Asa took the silver and gold from the treasure of the house of the Lord and the king's house and sent it to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, who lived in Damascus, saying, that covenant that we already talked about, right? Withdraw and do those things. Drop down to verse 6. Then King Asa took all of Judah and then carried away the stones of Ramah, its timber, with Baasha had been building, and he built Geba. Verse 7. All right. And at that time, Hananiah, here it is. Now, he's done wrong. When God does wrong, and we talked about this morning, God is steadfast and love and mercy. His grace is abounding, not willing that any should perish. Here you're going to see Hananiah, and that word is seer. A seer is another word, another way of saying prophet. The word prophet literally means to bubble forth. That prophet is going to tell the words of God. Remember how good of a person we've said that Asa was, and that we know he made a mistake. Now, verse 7, at the time Hananiah the seer came to Asa, king of Judah, and said to him, because you relied on the king of Syria, and did not rely on the Lord your God. Let's stop right there and go back real quick. Because you relied, because he was confident, because he had a reliability. In other words, because you have trusted. Do you see it? The seer, the prophet, is telling King Asa, God is against you because you didn't fully trust me like you should have. Without faith, it's impossible to do what? please him. Another way of saying faith, pistis, is trust or belief. Pistis, bestow, is the word in the Greek, all right? Now, let's keep going. He says, you relied on the king of Syria, and you did not rely on the Lord, Yahweh, Jehovah, your God. The army of the king of Syria has escaped you. These people that you have made alliances with, they ain't even with you. They have escaped you now, okay? Verse 8, were not the Ethiopians and the Libyans a huge army with very many chariots and horsemen? Yet, because you relied on the Lord, he gave them into your hand. What is God trying to do to him? What is he trying to do through his seer, his prophet? What is he trying to do to him? He's trying to make him to recall, you had no reason not to stop trusting me. This trust is not a one-time thing, buddy. And you trusted me right here, but now you're going to make this alliance, and you're going to take even of my gold and stuff to go give it to him. And the one that you have allied with, he's just as crooked as all crooked could be. Can you imagine his words and how they prick his heart? And Asa is a good man, but watch how he responds to Hadonai, the seer, this prophet, right? He says, yet because you relied on the Lord, he gave them into your hand. Verse 9, for the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to give strong support to those whose heart is blameless toward him. God is looking. He beholds the good and the evil. And he's desiring to do good and support you and I when we're trying to be righteous. We talked about that this morning in Proverbs 16 and other passages. You have done foolishly in this, for from now on you will have wars. Then Asa was angry with the seer and put him in the stocks in prison, for he was enraged with him because of this. Now, what you mad at the seer for? He ain't did nothing. You don't go to get mad at the messenger. You know, sometimes my mom and them used to tell my brother and sister, go tell Brian to come here. It was my turn to get disciplined, okay? A whooping, let me just be honest. And what you come here and tell me for that for? You know, Mama told me to, you know what I mean? I'm mad at my brother for giving me the message. We done been breaking everything in the house while my mom and daddy was gone, and now it's time to pay up, and you mad at the messenger. The truth of the matter is you know you're guilty. And instead of owning up to it, it's a lot easier to lash out and even tongue whip sometimes someone else instead of holding that mirror up and looking and said, man, that was a bonehead decision. You know the interesting thing about King David? When he saw his stuff, hey, man, he owned up to it. And you can't read Psalm 51 and not get that. He asked the Lord, forgive me the sins of my youth. Remember that? And then he goes on to say, create in me a clean heart. You know, this contrite and broken spirit is what you desire. When he realized thou art the man, hey, there it is. We have to own up to it is the point. Trust and obedience is not a one-time thing. All right, let's keep reading. So he's enraged because of this. Now watch it. He don't stop there. And Asa inflicted cruelties upon some of the people at the same time. Say, man, we just read about how he tore down all this stuff. He even got rid of his mama. And he needed to, right? Because she wasn't doing right. And tore down all the stuff of his daddy. But then when it was time for him to take that casserole, buddy, he didn't take it too well. He didn't take it too well. The mark, I think, one of the good characteristics of a Christian is when we're rebuked or we're chastened, we receive it in the right spirit. If you know that you've dropped the ball and you haven't been doing your best, and you haven't been doing everything there, don't get mad at the person for telling you that. Just, I appreciate it. The person that can tell you where you are dropping the ball is a person that loves you. It took me years to figure that out. I used to get mad at my coach for yelling at me. I mean, fighting mad, literally, because he would yell at me, and I thought he was riding me too hard. And then one time he said, Birdow, if I didn't believe in you and I didn't believe that you had potential, I wouldn't exert so much energy. Light bulb moment. He's trying to pull it out of you, trying to get the best out of you. This one that I'm thinking might not have my best interest at heart is the one that absolutely has my best interest at heart. All right? Verse 11, the acts of Asa from the first to the last are written in the books of kings of Judah and Israel. And in the 39th year of his reign, Asa was diseased in his feet, and his disease became severe. Now, when you look, it says it's in the 39th year. And when you go in verse 1, in the 36th year of the reign, he goes up and do this. So about 3 years. about 3 years, if you will. He says, watch it, verse 12. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa was diseased in his feet, and his disease became severe. Yet, even in his disease, he did not seek the Lord. You got to stay committed. Trust and obedience is not a one-time thing. You know, I'm going to tell you how people lie to you, all right, in the religious world. They'll make you believe that once you are in the body of Christ, it's all good. You eat, drink, and be merry. Well, you shouldn't do that, but there's nothing else right there. That cannot be more foreign from the Scriptures. You can't read plain Scriptures. Better for that man to never have heard than to have heard and turn back, like the dog to the vomit. His latter end is worse than his beginning. Well, what was his beginning? Where was he at in his beginning? He was outside. The one who knows better, I'm paraphrasing, shall be beaten with many stripes. That's what the book teaches, man. And so you see in his old age right here, he can't even muster up and pray to God for help. What a sad turn of events. What are we talking about? Trust and obedience to God. Faith and obedience to God is not a one-time thing. It's a lifelong act. So this idea that saying, I used to do this. When I was younger, I always helped out in this. Well, when I'm telling you, I used to. What about now? Well, I'm old. Last time I checked, Titus 2 says the older women are still to teach if you got your faculties. Last time I checked, Titus 2 says the old men are still to teach if you still have your faculties. There's something you can still do, maybe not physically like you used to. But anyways, what a sad history that we see right here. In his disease, he did not seek the Lord, but sought help from physicians. Sound like us sometimes? We'll spend more time on the phone, talking with doctors and research than we do in prayer. I know a good friend of mine right now. He's a preacher. His wife has terminal brain cancer. They're not even in their 50s, and they have kids. But he wants to keep it a secret and won't ask for prayers. How foolish. Will not ask for prayers. She is basically lying to people when they come visit and say, how you doing? She makes it seem like it's some other thing that she has and lies to them and doesn't tell them that in fact the cancer even spread to her chest and everything else. But won't do it. So the song, why not pray out to God in prayer? Why not ask everybody to pray for you as much as possible? Why not do everything you can, but the exact opposite is happening? It can happen is my point. You can look back this and say it was centuries and centuries and centuries later, but people are still the same today in a lot of ways, beloved, in the exact same way. Instead of him doing it, it seems to me like he's harboring this anger from the seer and what he's saying. That's what it seems to me. Yet even in his disease, he did not seek the Lord, but sought help from physicians. Verse 13, and Asa slept with his fathers, dying in the 41st year of his reign. They buried him in the tomb that he had cut for himself in the city of David. They laid him on a bier that had been filled with various kinds of spices prepared by the perfumer's arts, and they made a great fire in his honor. And that's how he ends his reign. We have to trust in God wholly and continually, all right? Let's finish this lesson out. Verse 7, we're not going to have time to get into it, but in Proverbs chapter 3, he says, trust in the Lord, lean not on thy own understandings, and all thy ways acknowledge him, and he's going to do what? Direct thy paths. Proverbs chapter 3. There's a verse in here that I didn't quote that I just skipped over when I was doing it. I see it in my mind, but I'm going to read it to make sure so I won't leave that out. But Proverbs 3, that was verse 4, verse 5 rather. But I want you to see this right here. I'll just read it real quick. Verse 1. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. We talked about that word heart this morning. For length of days and years of life, and peace they will add to you. Do you think he had peace at the end of his life? I don't believe he did. Verse 3, key phrase of knowing God. Let not steadfast love, because God is steadfast love, and faithfulness, an idea of trust, forsake you. Don't let faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. So you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and all thy ways acknowledge, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths, or make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Watch it. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. We have to trust in God wholly in times of good and in times of bad. I don't believe these examples, like King Asa, are in the Holy Writ for no reason. I believe they're in the Bible for you and I, so we can look and examine and we can extrapolate certain Bible truths. And ultimately, before I preach any lesson, I guarantee you I didn't wrestle with it. This thing done worked on me already. And when I look at myself and I say, man, am I continually trusting in him? Or do I sometimes try to take things into my own hand and do it? Oh, it's very easy to do. And then I think of that song, oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Again, I hope, trust, and pray I've said something to encourage you, something to strengthen you. The gospel is simple. They heard that message of Jesus dying and being buried and resurrected for sins. They believed that message, and according to that message, they were baptized for the remission of sins, and they come up a new creation in Christ.